Welcome everybody to this video, which I've titled "When the Scales Don't Budge, um, Seeing the Progress That Really Matters." Um, Now, this is a subject that uh, everyone will encounter at some point on their journey. Um, the scales just don't move, or even they go up. And so so what then happens is you begin to question. You begin to question what's the point? Why are you doing this? And it's really the moment for those of you that have been looking at light minds for some time, where you pause um, and you think about things and you consider things, and it's really an opportunity which can become a major turning point in your journey getting into great shape, being the way you want to be. So you don't pause because it feels good to do so, but because of what it will actually reveal for you. Um, so this is what we're going to focus on here, and we're going to look at what are the real signs of progress. So when the scales stop moving, um, what is it really all about? So we assume something's gone wrong. We've messed up. Our body is resisting change. We're failing. It's not working fast enough. But the truth of the matter is, the scales are the least interesting measure of your transformation. Okay, they're important, and I will touch on this right at the end. They're very important, but uh, they're the least interesting. They show you the least. So scales can tell you one thing. They are a moment in time reading of the water in your body, your hormones, your digestion, your sodium, how well you're sleeping, whether you've got fat on you, whatever. But that's what it's really telling you. It What scales can't do is explain the things that are essential for long-term success. And that's why in Light Minds, weight loss, you taking a daily scorecard is important, and there are reasons, as I said, which we'll touch on. But the daily scorecard, the measurement on the scales, is more about the awareness on your journey. That's the important thing about those. But you don't lose weight and sustain that weight through having perfect weigh-ins. You lose weight and sustain it, which is what we're really all about in Light Minds, through consistency, understanding what's going on, and having a healthier relationship with yourself. Okay, so that's what it's really all about. Light Minds is about understanding what's going on for yourself, what's happening through your experience from moment to moment. So, what about the scales then? Why don't you see change all the time? And why might they increase? Well, there are numerous things, and I'm sure those of you that work with us will have coaches, so they'll explain these things. But just to summarize them, if you ate more carbs the day before that you went on the scales, then you could have much more water in your muscles. If you trained harder, what happens is your muscles store glycogen and water. Um, if you slept badly, then the cortisol increases in your body and will show an increase of weight. And this also applies to stress. You could have a situation where your digestion is slower that day. Um, your hormones in your cycle could be out of sync. You've eaten salty food. All of these things could reflect a change on the scales, and none of them have anything to do with fat gain. So you have to remember that your body is dynamic. Okay, it's a dynamic system, and like all systems, things fluctuate. Now, what the scales are doing is they're giving you data. They're not judging. They're not about your identity. There's no evidence in there of failure. They're just information. Um, so if that's why the scales can go up and down, what can't they measure? And this really is what we're all about in Like Minds. Um, because there are shifts happening inside of you every day that you're blind to, and the scales are blind to. You might get a sense of them, but you don't really know. See, insights are occurring all the time, and we don't know they are. Now, sometimes we have these aha moments, and we go, "Oh, I've seen that's an insight." But what we don't appreciate is insights are taking place in us all the time, all the time, most of which are unseen. So as you go on your journey, your relationship with food will be changing. You might notice that you're pausing. You're eating with much more awareness. You're not inhaling your meals out of stress or boredom. All of those things are progress. But you might not notice them. But then when I raise them in your awareness, you might go, "Oh yeah, now I can see this is happening." Another element that's really important is you're being kinder to yourself. You're catching that critical voice that goes on all the time, nagging you. Um, you're you might notice that you're speaking to yourself more in a more friendly way rather than the drill sergeant of criticism. Those kind of things. That's also progress. Um, you might notice that you're bouncing back faster after a wobble, and a difficult, challenging day doesn't turn into a difficult week. You're able to regroup, reset, and then go again. That's another example of progress. And really, the one that's for me the most powerful is you're learning how your mind works. You're learning what's going on moment to moment in your experiencing. You're recognizing urges, for example, habitual patterns as they're coming along. And you're not just blindly reacting to situations. You're in effect becoming more conscious. And the ultimate one is you're cultivating trust. And I've mentioned this several times in the emails and on these videos. This is the most important shift of all. You have trust in the process. You have trust in your ability to go through the process. You have trust that you don't need to be perfect. There's no such thing as that. But you can still be successful. And the scales do not measure trust, but trust is what will change your life. Trust is what will enable you to achieve what you want. So, a key foundation of the Light Minds program is understanding inside out, the concept of inside out, the idea of inside out, the idea that you are creating your world inside yourself. And that, that's just foundational. It's the most important thing. I say it's a concept. It's true for life. So your experience isn't coming from the number on the scale. It comes from the meaning your mind gives that number. Okay. So no matter what the number is, you are making up what that means. The scales are neutral. The thinking that we have about the scales is anything but neutral. So instead of reacting to the number, we want to shift to a question. And the question is, what does this number bring up in me? And what can I learn from the number? So this in itself can be a big shift because it transfers the scale from being a judge to you to being a mirror that shows up where you doubt yourself, where you're scared, where old patterns whisper. Uh, and once you can begin to see this happening, because you'll hear it as well, you'll feel it. You keep hearing me say your feelings are the things that tell you whether you're in your head, your heart. And so once you begin to understand what's going on, um, you're no longer controlled by it. And that's the real progress that you're making. So in the email that I sent out this week, I said I set you a little challenge. So list three ways you've changed recently, but none of those three ways are scale related. So let's just have a look at that in a bit more detail and think about this for yourself. Now, I'm going to give you some examples, but think about this for yourself because what I really want to do here is raise your awareness more of what is actually going on. Most people aren't aware of their progress in terms of their understanding. They use the scales to do that. So, what about your relationship to food? Maybe you're eating slower. Maybe you stop when you're satisfied. You're not eating everything on the plate. Maybe you're drinking more water. Um, Maybe you cut out a snack that you don't need at night time, for example. So those kind of things. See if you can become aware of those. Notice those. What about your relationship to yourself? What's changed there? Um, are you having more compassion? Are you placing less pressure on yourself? Do you have more awareness? And another aspect that's really important for people in terms of this is, do you have more hope? So a third thing that you could look at is about life generally. Is life becoming a bit easier than it was for you before? For example, your energy. Do you have greater clarity? Are you noticing mood changes? Are you more confident? Now, all of these things might seem very small, and you only might notice them in small ways, but that's the beginning. Okay? Because these are all the foundations of sustainable weight loss. And that's what we're all about. It's not about short-term weight loss. Um, there are lots and lots of ways you can lose weight in the short term. They're all out there. We're not about losing weight in the short term. We're about changing and changing for good. And that's really important because most of the ways that people try to lose weight don't change their relationship with themselves. And that's what you're doing here. You're changing your relationship with yourself. So let's summarize this, particularly in terms of going forward. The scale is not the goal. The goal is transformation. The scales are a tool to aid you to do that. Progress that you can't see is often the most important progress of all because it's happening deep within you. And you'll be changing in ways that matter more than any number because they're the things that will enable sustainability. So all of these changes will carry you forward long after you've given up the need for the scales. So the key thing to take from this is don't let a number define your journey. A journey that's fundamentally emotional, psychological, and deeply personal. Your body will follow the shifts happening inside of you, which is, again, for those of you that have spent more time in Light Minds, would have heard me talk about how we behave, how we act, comes about from our internal insights. So how we are physically in our shape and our weight is all a reflection of that, what's going on inside. So why don't you have a go at seeing what your non-scale wins are? Write them down, acknowledge them, speak to your coach about them, speak to other people about them, and see what's going on there. Now, just to finish off, there's one thing I want to address because this is obviously about non-scale wins. And some people, when I do this, go, oh, I don't need the scales. So if that's true, why do we, for those of you that are in the nutrition clubs, our nutrition clubs, which are highly effective at helping people achieve great results, you might be thinking, well, hold it, you know, we don't need these. That's not right. But actually, um, we use them for a real purpose, and they're very important, and we use them daily. So the key thing to start with is, although some coaches might believe it, we don't weigh daily to measure progress. They might think that, and you might think that. We actually weigh daily to build awareness. That's the most important thing. See, daily weigh-ins aren't about chasing a number. They're about learning how your body is behaving. And they teach you a number of things. You learn to see that fluctuations going up and down is normal, completely normal. Losing weight is not linear for all the reasons I stated earlier on. So when you weigh once a week, a temporary spike in that can feel catastrophic. But when you weigh daily, you start seeing the natural rhythm. It's up a little, down a little, flat for several days even. Then you get movement. We're trying to remove the drama for you. It's just a regular thing. Another aspect of weighing daily is that the scale, it removes for you the scale having some kind of emotional power over you. When you face something on a regular basis, the fear begins to disappear. The number begins to lose its sting, and you begin to see it as data rather than judgment. A lot of people, when they come into our clubs, you have used the scales in the past to judge themselves. And as I've said throughout this particular video, uh, the most important changes are the changes taking place inside yourself. So we want you to help you to see through that and not judge yourself. Another element is we want you to begin to notice your body patterns. Um, you know, sometimes you might notice you're holding water after workouts, or what happens to the scales after you've had salty food, or if you've had a good night's sleep, do they get better? Um, and all those kind of things. So you begin to notice that, and that enables your confidence to grow and remove some of the anxiety in the whole thing. So the scales will keep you connected to the journey, but they won't you won't feel controlled by it. They're not a controlling thing. And so daily weighing done with what I'm talking about in Light Minds isn't about pressure. It's about connection and awareness. It's about seeing the scales as um, being neutral, providing you with data. For any of you, into sports or anything like that, will know that athletes track tons of data. And in fact, what am I talking about? Not athletes these days. Anyone going to the gym, they're all wearing whoops and everything and these rings and whatever. They're tracking data. Um, my thing about that when I come across this with some people that I speak to is not to obsess about that. It's about providing with information. So most importantly, it reveals the truth about what's going on. That weight loss is a trend, it's not an event. And if you zoom out over the weeks and months, you'll see that downward trend is occurring. But some of the little dots, the daily dots in between, they're the wobbles, but the trend is occurring. It's not a one-off event. But often when we get on the scales, that's what we see it as. But we want to measure that trend. And that's what really matters. And that's why we look at it in the nutrition clubs. It's not the micro movements that's important, it's the bigger picture. So weighing in daily isn't about letting the scales define you. It's about freeing you from the idea that the scales are a verdict. Okay. So it just becomes a regular part of your day. And when you combine that with daily awareness, then that's where the real big shift comes because you're building a relationship with yourself, particularly with your body. You're staying grounded, you're calm and confidence. And that really is the whole point. of like minds is about building this trust inside yourself. Um, so hopefully you found that useful and answered a few questions for you. Thanks very much.